Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on installing the MySQL server software, the MySQL Workbench software, and the textbook files for Joel Murach's MySQL second edition on macOS X, or macOS as it's called in the current release. This is my third attempt to do this at this particular time. I'm recording in January 2017. And as is usually the case, it's pretty challenging to come up with the best combination of the server software and the MySQL Workbench software to install for a particular version of the operating system that you have. The operating system, the server software, and the Workbench software are all in flux all the time. And this is a free product. And it is kind of on the bleeding edge of the development. People who want the less challenging version of it get the paid version, which is always sort of an older version that comes with paid support. I have found a new combination this morning that I like even better than the last one, so I'm re-recording this installation tutorial. And as I go along, I'm going to give you hints about how, if you're using this a year from now, how you might choose a particular version if there were other versions available. Okay? So, first of all, what version of the operating system do I have here? Well, let's just look in about this Mac. It's macOS Sierra version 10.12.2. Okay, and this is as of the, what is today? Today is the 13th of January 2017. As of today, this is the current version of macOS. All the updates apply. Okay? So let's go see what we're going to match up with that on the MySQL side. The browser that I like to use to do the install is Firefox. That's because I use it on both my installs for Windows 10 and for Mac OS. I don't know that there'd be a problem using Safari. There probably isn't a problem using Safari, but if you want to do exactly what I'm doing, then you'll install Firefox if you don't already have it. And okay, let's go to the place where we get the MySQL software, and we're going to type in the address dev.mysql.com. And I guess that's the developer community page. I can see from the tab here it's the developer zone. Okay. And let's kind of stretch this out and get the benefit of more of the real estate. Okay, and there's a link here for downloads. Let's go to that. And we're going to be using two pieces of the MySQL software. First of all, let's look at the title, MySQL Community Downloads. We're using the Community Edition or Community version, the free version of MySQL. And as I said a little bit earlier, that's a double-edged sword. One, it's free. Two, it's on really the bleeding edge of the development effort for MySQL. And so you you often get things that don't work exactly as advertised. So one of the skills that you need to develop in working with this tool is how to deal with that issue, and we're going to be dealing with that now as we install the software and really throughout the course. So the two pieces that we're going to install: MySQL Community Server. We'll do that first. And then down here a bit further, MySQL Workbench. Workbench is the client to the server's server. Okay, so we're going to have both a client and a server that we're going to use. And we'll see them both in action before we're done here. Okay, so I somehow I accidentally clicked on Workbench, which is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to click on the download link for MySQL Community Server. So let's click on that. And we go to the page and we see that the current version, the generally available release, is MySQL Community Server 5.7.17. Now, again, this is lucky Friday the 13th of January 2017, and that's the version that they're serving up today. Well, when you get here, even if you're doing it tomorrow, they may be serving up a later version, okay? So then you're going to have to decide, are you going to install the current newest version, or are you going to look for the version that I have, okay? If you want to use the current newest version, then you'll stay right here on the page and pick one of the downloads. If you're looking for a previous generally available version, which is not all the versions, they don't save them all, but let's click on that. The previous GA version that they have is 5.6.35. Okay? In our case, I'm going to hit the back arrow because not what I wanted to do. That was a little too far back. Okay, so let's go back down again. Here we are. This 5.7.17 is really giving me the best experience right now today, and that's what I'm recommending today. So that's what we're going to download, and that's what we're going to install. Okay, now which of the files are we going to do? Well, we have two that are compressed tar archives. They're not proper Mac installer files. Okay, so you have to know about you have to know some substantial amount about doing software package installation if you pick one of those. What I'm going to have you do is take the third one, the DMG archive. Okay, and it says that it's for Mac OS X at 10.12, so that's pretty promising, and I think that's probably why it runs as well as it does on this version of the OS. So I'm going to go over and click on the download button. And we get an opportunity to log into an Oracle web account. And it turns out that that's just optional. Now, I've had an Oracle web account for a long time, and it's a way for them to keep in touch with you about new releases of software and all that kind of stuff. And it's certainly worthwhile doing. But we don't have to do it here, so we're not going to do it. We're going to take the link that says, no thanks, just start my download. So we're taking that. And I always like to see my downloaded file. So I'm not going to ask to open. I'm going to ask to save it and click on OK. And if we look down in the dock area, we can see that under the Under the Firefox icon, we're seeing the progress of the download, which is going to be pretty fast, but just so that I don't waste your time, I'm going to go on to pause until that download is done. So I'll be right back. And we're back. So our download has completed. Let's go find that file. So I'm going to open a Finder and go to Downloads. And there is my DMG file. So that looks good. Let's just give it the double click to get it installed. So we're giving it a double click. It's going to run the installer. Instead of doing that, it's going to show us a package to run the installer. So let's double click that, double left click. And now that runs the installer. And click continue. And continue again. And accept the license with agree. And then click on install. And the password that it's going to want here is your operating system password, the password that you use to log into macOS. So I'm going to type in mine. And it's doing the install. And it seems that just about every time that we have a new version of this product, the way it handles the password for the server changes. So the previous version on the Mac installer didn't ask you for a password at all. And so you wouldn't have a password for your server. Now, having a password for your server is really a good practice to have. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to have a very simple, easy to remember password for our server, and we're going to use it as the root user. Now, both of those things are kind of insecure in a production database environment, but this is an installation that's just on our PC, and in my case it's on my laptop. It's protected by the password to my laptop, and for this developer version to learn for this class, this is really all the security we're going to need. So it gave us a temporary password here, and what I want to do is I want to remember that. So how can I do that? Well, I want to put it in a text editor file. So I'm going to go down to Finder again. Oh, I've already got a Finder open. So Finder, and then let's click on Applications. And the text editor that comes pre-installed with macOS is called Text Edit. So let's give it a double click there. And that's coming up under that message. And we want a new document, so there's a button for that. And so we've got a new document. So let's just take this bunch of text here, bunch of nonsense text, and copy it, and we're going to paste it into our text editor such that if we have to remember the temporary password, we're not going to have lost it. Okay, so I'm going to go up to the menu at the top for text edit, file, save, and I'm just going to put it into documents. I don't have a lot of things there, but I'm going to call this MySQL default server password. Maybe not default server password, maybe temp. That's what it really is. Temp server password, and I'm going to save it. Okay, so I have that there, and I'm just going to minimize that so I don't have to open it again when I come back. I can click OK to clear that dialog, and now I'm OK. All right, and now I can close the installer. And it asks me, do I want to move the installation file to trash? And what the heck? This is a new feature of macOS Sierra. I think it's a good one. These installer files are pretty big. So sure, move it to trash. I like that. All right, so let's get back to the software here. Oh, before we do that, before we get back to installing software, let's go see the evidence that we really have installed the server. The best way to control the server on the Mac is out here in the operating system. If you go up to the menu bar and click on the Apple, so left click on the Apple and then choose System Preferences. Okay, and then down on the last line of preferences, we have an icon now for the MySQL server. Give that a click. And you'll come to the dialog where we get the status of the server and we can start and stop it. And there's also an option here to ask for it to automatically be started when we boot our computer, when we start the operating system. Okay, so what I'm going to recommend that you do is leave that automatically start the server check, so you don't have to come here every time you want to use the server. I think if you get to the point where you're not using this product anymore and the course is over, it might make sense to come here and uncheck that. But for the duration of the course, it's not going to be using up a lot of resources, so just leave it up. But for right now, let's just prove to ourselves that we can start it. So let's click on Start. And again, it wants the password, not the password to the server, it wants the password to our Mac. Okay, so let's type that in. Okay, and we have a running server, which is great. Now, I've had good luck with this feature that automatically starts the server on startup, which means you don't have to come here to this dialog. But there are times when perhaps you're not getting the behavior that you want out of the product and you would like to stop the server and restart it. So you're always able to come here, and just to remind you of how to get there, in the operating system, you go up to the toolbar, left click on the Apple, click on System Preferences, go down and click on the icon for MySQL, and then you're at the dialog where you can control the server. Now, there is a feature in our MySQL Workbench for controlling the server, for starting and stopping the server. And it's not enabled when we do the install of that software. And I'm going to recommend that you leave it not enabled. I really haven't figured out a good procedure for getting that to work. And this is a perfectly good way to start and stop and check on the status of the server. Okay, so I'm going to close that dialog. Now we'll go back to MySQL, and let's just type in the domain name to get us to dev again, dev.mysql.com. And we get a link for MySQL downloads. We do that. And you'll remember the second piece of software that we want is MySQL Workbench, which in our class we're just going to call Workbench. So, okay, let's click on the link to download Workbench. Okay. And there's some documentation at the top, but then you come to a very similar page that we had for the community server. And so what they offer you is the most recent version of Workbench. Okay, so it is Workbench 6.3.8. And unfortunately, my experience is that that doesn't behave sufficiently well in this configuration of software for it to be worth installing. So we want to get the next previous version. So where do we find that? Well, we go over to the right and we find this link looking for previous GA versions. Click that. And again, it knows we're on a Mac. And it's suggesting 6.2.5. That's what we're going to use. But let's look, are there any other versions? And there's a 6.1, there's a 6.0, there's a 5.2. Unfortunately, those are not sufficiently functional for us to use them. There were some features that came out in 6.2 that really make it fairly important that we go at least with the 6.2 version. So the one that it's offering us is the one that we're going to want. Okay, there's only one file type to download. It is a DMG archive, which is great. And we're going to download it. So let's just go over, click the download button. Again, it's going to invite us to log in, but we're not going to. We're just going to click on no thanks, just start my download. And again, we're going to ask to save the file. And I'm going to pause again while that download goes on, although it's pretty short, and I'll be right back. And we're back. So let's just, let's get a Finder window up here, go to downloads. And here is the download for Workbench. You see it's a .dmg file. That's a proper Mac installer. Let's just double click on this. And it seems to be opening okay. Okay, and it's bringing up another kind of typical Mac installer. This is the one where it gives you the metaphor that you've got some software that's in the left box that you want to pull onto the applications folder in the right box. So we're going to left click on the dolphin icon, pull it to the right, and drop it over top of the applications folder. And that kind of jumped on me there to the applications folder, but it seems to be doing what I want. It says I can't open it because it's from an unidentified developer, but that's okay. I don't want to open it quite yet. But I'm also not seeing it here. So I'm thinking that maybe that didn't really behave like we wanted to. So let's try it all again. So double click on the installer, pull to the right and drop a little quicker than the last time. Try it one more time. Pull to the right and drop. Let's just say that we want to replace here. Okay, looks like I solved that problem that I created for myself there. And now we can close this. And let's go in our Finder window. Let's go look at the applications directory. And we should have a MySQL Workbench file, and we do. Now, something that happens from time to time these days when you go to run a new program is it will complain, that it doesn't know the developer or it's been downloaded from the internet or something like that. And that's what I think happens here. Let's just double click this on this entry for the file, and it's going to complain that it can't be opened because it's from an unidentified developer. And a typical fix for this is to hold down the control button and left click on that line, and now it gives you a drop down and you can choose open, and it complains again, but then you have the option of clicking open. Okay, we didn't have that the last time, so we're going to click open, and I think it pretty much remembers what we want. Okay, so this is the first look that we're getting at Workbench. We'll be seeing a lot of it in the class. And you will recall that we had to go to the applications folder to run it. Well, I don't want to do that. I'd like it to be in the dock. So while you have the program up in the dock, go down to the dock, hover over the icon for Workbench, the blue icon with the white dolphin on it. Right click, choose options, keep in dock. And I always like to go back and make sure I actually did that right. So look at options. Yeah, keep in dock is now checked. Okay. So the next couple things that we're going to do is we're going to put Workbench through its paces. And here's where I'm just going to take a segue and say that even though we picked a special older version of Workbench to go with the version of server that we picked and our current release, the operating system, we're not going to get perfect performance out of Workbench. And I've been working with Workbench for I think 3 or 4 years now, and there always seems to be some bug in whatever version I'm using. The greatest thing is that it's free. The worst thing is that it's free, and it's always slightly experimental. We'll be able to get our job done very well if we just have the patience to bear with whatever shortcomings it has. It doesn't seem to have as many shortcomings on the Windows platform as it has on the Mac, and I think that probably has to do with the fact that there are just a lot more users on the Windows platform than the Mac, so they get more bug reports and they get fixed faster. But especially in the months after an operating system update like macOS Sierra, you'll find that you'll come to Workbench and it's misbehaving. And for right now, I think I've got the best combination for today of the versions of things, and we're just going to have to live with what we have. One of the things that often goes wrong is it's a little hard to start and stop. Now, I was able to stop that just by clicking on the red jewel, so that's good. And now let's go back down to the dock and click again. And I'm able to start it, and let me stop it again. Oh, so that's working pretty well. So far, we're doing well. Good. Well, we're going to come back here in a couple of minutes. Once we get the files that accompany our textbooks, once we download those, we'll come back here and get a brief introduction to Workbench. The bigger introduction to Workbench is going to be in another session. Okay, so close it yet again, right? Let's go to the browser and let's go to the website of the publisher of the textbook. So the textbook again is MySQL second edition by Joel Murach, and his publisher is Murach.com, murach.com. And we're going to go there someday soon. And I just want to point out that the website is responsive, and because of that, the navigation bar that I'm going to send you to here, there's a navigation bar. If your browser is a little too narrow, you won't get the navigation bar. You'll get this kind of mobile-oriented navigation icon. If that's happening to you, typically if you're on even a laptop, you'll be able to pull out to the left until you see the navigation bar. We want to hover over Shop Books and pick Database Programming Books. Okay, and it's the center one that we want here, Murach's MySQL. Give that a click. And this is a lot of things. It's a page where you're able to purchase the books, which I hope you've already done. And down towards the bottom, there are some helpful related links, one of which is this tab for free downloads. So let's click on that. Okay. And there are sample chapters and all that kind of stuff, but hopefully we already have the book. What we want are the book examples and exercises files. And there's two versions. There's one for Windows, which we don't want. And then there's the last one, zip file for any system. That's the one we do want. So we're going to click on this Download Now button. Unfortunately, it's not going to simply download. It's going to ask us to register on their site. Then it's going to give us an opportunity to come back here and to download. I know it's a bit of a pain, but these are good people, and they don't seem to bother you very much with email. They will keep you up to date on new versions of their books. So I'm just going to put my information in, Kevin Trainer. And I'm going to use my email address from the iSchool in Illinois, which is where we're going to be using the video first. And I'm going to have to confirm that. And the country as United States looks okay. I don't mind getting their email, so I'm going to leave that checked. Down here in the CAPTCHA, I'm going to click in the box to say I'm not a robot. And it's going to ask me to do a little clicking. And I think those are the right answers. Let's just see. Seems to like that. It agrees I'm not a robot. So when you register by clicking the register button, it would be nice if it downloaded the file, but it doesn't. It simply puts you in the position where you're ready to go navigate to do that. So we're going to click on register. And now here's a button, continue to download. It would be nice if you click on this, if it downloaded the file, but it doesn't do that. It just puts this in a position to navigate to that. So we're going to click continue to download. And where are we but just the page for the textbook? So we're at the page for the textbook. Then we have to navigate, click the tab for free downloads. Then we have to scroll down and find zip file for any system, and there's a button download now, which really means, at this point, it really means download now. So we're going to give it a click. And I can tell from the animation that we've already downloaded the zip file. So let's go open a Finder and go to Downloads. And we'll see that we have downloaded the zip file msq2 underscore all files.zip. That's it. So in this operating system, I can simply double click to unzip the zip file, and now I have the directory that I need. And in the Mac operating system, I have my students put these textbook files immediately under documents. So we have them put them in the documents folder. So the shortcut way to do that is to simply grab this folder, pull it over into the panel here on top of documents and let go. And then if we go to documents, we'll see that we have a MySQL folder there. So let's just go see what's in there. What is in there? Well, we have the book scripts. Okay, so for every chapter of the book, the examples that are in the chapter, let's go to chapter 3, because that's where we first begin to learn to do the SQL select statement. This is the first really hands-on chapter that we have. So each of the examples in the book, you are able to go and run the example. And we'll see how to do that when we get over to Workbench. So we've got those files. We've got the DB setup files. That's what we're going to run now to set up the databases that we're going to use with the textbook. The diagrams we're going to be getting to towards the end of the course. The exercise solutions are good. The exercises that are published at the end of each of the chapters are not the ones that I'm going to assign to hand in. So you can use them for practice. And the good thing is you have the solutions, and the solutions are right here. Okay, I'm going to give you yet more content. First, I'm going to give you a PDF with the exercises on it for each of the exercises that we're going to do, each of the chapters that we're going to do. And the author has a companion set of exercises for a case that he calls My Guitar Shop. And we're going to be downloading the starter files for those in about a week, maybe 2. And I'll have that all for you with a little bit of help when that time comes. Okay, so we have all the files that we need. Let's close all these windows we've got. We should be able to use these directly from Workbench. So let's open Workbench. So I want to talk a little bit about what Workbench is. Workbench is the tool that we use on our machine. It's really geared to be a user environment for either a Power Database user or for a software developer. And when we're taking this course, we're kind of a little of both, so it's just what we need. It connects us to the server in a fairly direct way. It just so happens that each of us have our own copy of the server that runs on our own machine, which gives us a lot more experience in how to control the server and things like that. So we're each going to have our own copy of the server, and we're each going to have our own copy of Workbench. We're going to use them in a tandem in order to get our work done. You should have a connection here. These things at the top are called connections. It's a connection between this client, Workbench, and the server. This is called a local instance. It's local because it's on your machine. It's an instance because it's an instance of MySQL Community Server. And 3306 is the number of the IP port that it's listening on. So we should be able just to click on it. Let's give it a left click. Okay. And remember the password stuff. So it wants us to enter the password for the following service. MySQL at localhost 3306. That's our MySQL server. The user is root. That's the only user that we're going to use. Again, in a production environment, us playing around as the root user would be considered insecure. But in a developer environment like this, it's typical because security is not the issue. Learning is the issue here. And the password, well, it's that temporary password that we had. Now, where did that go? Well, that's down here in my text edit file. So I'm just going to come back to my text edit file, highlight it, right click and copy it, and I shrink that again. And I'm just going to right click and paste this into the password field, which works. I like to click the box that says save the password in the keychain. And now we're going to say OK. And now it's going to give us a chance to change it to a more memorable password. Now, if you read the appendix in the Murach book for installing the server software, Joe Murach suggests that we use the password Sesame, S-E-S-E, no, Sesame, S-E-S-A-M-E, as in open sesame, in the old tale of having the password to get into the cave. Okay, it's a good one. It's easy to remember, so that's the one that I use. But the old password now is that temporary one, so I'm going to right click and just paste again. That's fine. And now I'm going to use Sesame, Sesame, and again using a password that is this easy to guess in a production environment for a server is a very bad idea. It's highly insecure. But again, the risk that we have is that we're going to forget the password onto the server that's on our own computer. So using an easy password here is appropriate, really, because we've got no production data, right? This is all going to be password protected by the password on our in my case, on my laptop. So I have all that together. Let's click on OK. It asks for the new password again. Put in Sesame. Tell it to save that to the keychain. And now it opens up a connection. Okay? So what's a connection? Well, it's a connection between this client software and a MySQL server. Okay? Now, for a real user in a big organization, that server would be in some kind of server room somewhere. It might be down the hall. It might be a couple floors away. It might be 3 buildings away. It might be on the other side of the world. Okay? For us, as we learn, well, we each have our own copy of the server. It's right here on our own computer, right? So this is the way that we connect to that. Okay, now what are the parts here? Well, we have the main thing that we do in Workbench is that we we write SQL queries and we run them. Okay? And so there is an editor panel in the middle where we are able to do that work with SQL queries. There's also a navigation panel on the left. The navigation panel allows us to tell Workbench, the database that we're working with, and to look at the databases and find out some information about them. So let's make this a little bit bigger because we can. Okay. So let's look over on the navigation panel. Right now, it says that if we look at schemas in MySQL are equivalent to databases. So this server has got one schema or database on it right now. It's called sys. It's the one that came with the installation. Okay, well, what could we do? Well, let's click on the little triangle and open it. We have tables, views, etc. Let's open tables. Okay, we've got one table called sysconfig. Okay, let's highlight that line or hover over it. And you can see off to the right there are three icons. The one that we're the most interested in is the rightmost one. It's the data view. So we're going to click on that. And what it's going to do, oddly enough, is it's going to run a query on that table, and it's going to give us this thing that we call a result set. And we can see that we have the result set. And these are things that, it looks like things that have to do with the configuration of the SQL product itself. And that, in fact, that's what it is. Okay, so what if we didn't want this tab in the editor panel anymore? We can go up to the tab where it is, click on the X, and it will close it. Now, I've got to tell you that when you start closing things, including the tabs in the editor panel or the whole product, in this current configuration that we have with the versions that we've installed here today, you may get something that locks up. Okay? And I hope I'm going to get it to lock up before I'm done with this. If not, I'll force it to lock up. And then I'll show you how to recover from it. Okay? How can you generally recover from it? Well, why don't I show you right now? How do you know you're locked up? Well, usually you have something twirling. Okay? If you're locked up on a query, at the top of the query tab, there'll be a little circular animation that says it's running the query, and it just be running forever. Okay? You also may try something and you'll see the classic Apple Mac swirly beach ball that says it's working, and it's just working forever. So what we need to do is we're going to need to force quit Workbench. How can we do that? Well, how we typically do it is we go up to the menu for the Mac, left click on the Apple, okay, pick force quit. MySQL Workbench is what we want to force quit. We force quit it. It asks us whether we really mean it, and we're going to say yes. And boom, it's gone. Okay? And you can tell down here in the dock, it doesn't have a little dot under it, so it's not running anymore. Okay? Now, let's try it again. What happens every once in a while, you get this thing up, okay, and you have the swirly beach ball going, okay, and you go, oh, I want to force quit it. So I could just, well, go up and I'll click on the apple. Well, lo and behold, you've got a swirly beach ball on the apple as well. Well, I don't like that. So how can you force up the dialog to get a force quit when you can't click on the apple? Well, just come down here somewhere on the desktop and pick Command Alt Escape. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got it on the keyboard. It's Option Command Escape. Okay. So at the same time, Option Command Escape, and you'll get that dialog. Force quit applications, force quit, force quit. Now, in my fooling around with this morning, I was able to get myself out of really any problem that I got by force quitting my way out of it. Okay? And is it appropriate or ideal that we get these kinds of problems? No, I don't think it is. But this is just the best that I'm able to do for you today. Perhaps someone in the class will discover some combination of things that gets us out of this problem altogether, in which case we'll share it among ourselves and off we'll go. Okay, so let's get in here one more time. Okay, so excuse me, when we come into Workbench, we want to click on the connection. So we've clicked on a connection here. And now there are two toolbars. There's a toolbar for the connection, and then there's a toolbar for each editor in the editor panel. In the upper toolbar, we want to take the second icon. It's the Open SQL icon. We're going to click on that, and it's going to take us to, in this case, it took me right to the Documents folder. So I want to find a file in that MySQL directory that we loaded. So let's highlight that. And I want to go to DB Setup. So let's highlight that. And the one that I want here, the one that creates all the databases, is called Create Databases SQL. And if you double click it, it will open. If you single click it, it will highlight, and then you come down to the right and click Open. So here it is, sitting here. This is an SQL script. It's pretty long. Let me just show you. It's, I think, 1,100 lines long, 1,135 lines long. And what this does is it defines all the tables in the database and the database itself, and it inserts all the test data into the database. So once we run this, in fact, it does it for 3 databases, one called AP, one called EX, one called OM. So how do you run a script file? Well, there are a couple different run options, but they are associated with these icons up here in the editor toolbar that are lightning bolts. And the one that's the easiest to use is the one on the left. If you use the one on the left, it will either run the entire script, or if you've highlighted some text within the script, like that, it will only run what you've highlighted. So of course you don't want anything highlighted, you want to run the whole thing. So I typically click up here in the corner, so I'm not highlighting anything, and then I click this plain lightning bolt. And if you look down here under Action Output, you'll see that we just got a whole lot of action that created our 3 databases or schemas. So let's look over on the left at the panel for the schemas, and oh, they're not there. We still only have the sys one. Well, that's because we need to refresh it. So up here on the line where it says schemas is a swirly refresh button. Give that a click. And you will see that we have added 3 new schemas or databases: AP, EX, and OM. So AP is the one from which most of the examples in the book are taken. AP first stands for accounts payable. EX stands for examples, so it just has a couple of odd things that are that don't fit immediately into AP. And OM is order management, and for the most part, that's not going to be used in the chapters that we're going to use. So let's take a look at AP. Okay, and again, let's make this a little bigger. Let's give ourselves all the real estate that we can right here. Okay, so the way that this works is that the tool does not know which of the databases or schemas you're using unless you choose it or you tell it in the script. Okay, now this create database script tells it which database to use. It says use AP. Okay, so we were able to run it even without a database previously selected. But in general, the examples from the book do not do that. So you have to tell it which of the databases you're going to be using. And so you have to click on AP. And you'll know you sufficiently clicked on it when you click away from it, you'll see, well, it used to go into bold. Now it doesn't go into bold anymore. Don't you just love that? Can I make it go into bold? Yes, it's in bold now. So maybe if you, well, eventually it goes into bold. That's how we know it's in use. Now let's take a look at the tables in here. Okay. Now I just want to point out that sometimes people get confused about exactly what is going on in the examples in the book, because AP is a business application that has to do with invoices, but it does not have to do with the invoices that we issue to our own customers and clients. It has to do with the invoices that are sent to us as a consumer of the goods and services of other organizations. Okay, so we get some goods, we get some services. They don't require us to pay immediately as they deliver them. They send us an invoice, and typically we'll agree to pay it in, say, 30 days. Okay, so accounts payable is the business process and application where we keep track of all the invoices that we received, and we try to pay them in just the length of time that we want to, typically around about 30 days. Okay, so the invoices are not our invoices, they're their invoices. They just happen to have come to us. So let's look at invoices. This is the major table. Again, there are 3 icons out to the right. The one that we're going to use first here is the data view, the rightmost one. And you'll see what happens is, in order to create that view, it just did a simple query. It selected all of the columns from the invoices table in the AP database. And so we can see that we have, I believe there are 114 invoices. Yep, there are 114 invoices in the database. Okay, and then what other kind of data do we have in here? We have vendors. So let's look at the data in the vendors table. These are all the vendors. There are about 100 of those, I think. 123. Okay. And those are the people who we got the invoices from. Those are the vendors who gave us goods and services. Okay, and then let's take a query from one of the examples in the book. Well, how do we do that? So let's go Let's go up to the toolbar, open a new query. All right, we don't want DB setup. We want to go to MySQL. Let's look at book scripts. Chapter 3 is the chapter where we learn how to do select statements. And then let's run number 6. So this is a series of selects we're going to run. And there we are right there. Okay. And let's come back and say, okay, instead of that, let's run number 2. So again, whenever you're selecting the files, if you double click on the file name, you'll open it. If you just highlight it, then you have to click the open button as well. Again, here are a bunch of selects here that we're going to run. And we're running the last one right there. And I forget why that's not giving us the results that we want, but there must be a reason. Let's try another one. Let's try number, did we try number 9? No, we didn't try 9. Try number 9. And so let's do that. And we've got some results. Okay, so we can see that we've loaded the databases we're going to be using with the book. All right, and we're all set. So this is all we're going to do here. Now let's see if we can close up the product without getting it to lock up. One thing we could do would be just to click here in the upper left and see if we can close the whole thing. Let's see. Close just fine. Okay. Now if you do that and you open it again, you don't have a connection. So you do have to click on the connection to get the connection back. Okay, but when you get into the connection, the tabs that you left up are still up. So you can close tabs individually. It seems to be working fairly well. Or the Query 1 tab never seems to go away. So let's go to the Query 1 tab. That's blank. That's one where you could write a new query. And then let's right click on that tab and say close other tabs. So it did close those. A lot of times when you're doing that, you'll get a lockup. So that looks okay. Now let's say if we want to close the local instance, that's the connection that we have to the server. There's a tab for that. A lot of times that will lock you up. Now that didn't lock us up, but it wasn't supposed to go all the way back to where we are now. So let's just open Workbench again and see if it's currently behaving. No, it's saying it quit unexpectedly. Do we want to reopen it? Well, we'll say okay. Okay, now sometimes when you get into this mode, you'll get some odd behavior. So let's see if we get some odd behavior. Let's get a connection up. Let's try to open up 306, which we ran before. Let's try to run that. Oh, here we go. Okay, so sometimes after this thing has crashed, all right, if we haven't gone and force quit it, it never really quit before. And now when we bring it up again, it really doesn't work. So now we're in this situation where, let's say, I can't close that tab. Can't close the other. Well, I closed the other tab. All right. Well, that's not what I want. But let's just go look. Let's say, okay, it quit unexpectedly. Do we want to reopen it? I can usually get everything cleaned up by going up here to the Apple. Okay. Saying force quit. No, it's not up there. Should be okay. All right, let's see if I can get it to work yet. All right, open the connection. Close 3.06. Let's try to look at a table. I always like to look at invoices. Let's look at that. Whoop, I went to the wrong one. Yeah, seems to be working okay. Let's go up and open a script. Let's open 3-06. Let's run it. And it ran okay. So again, I'm not saying that this is great, right? I'm just saying that this is the best that we have today. All right. So even though you're going to get some lockups, I think this is the optimal combination of software pieces that we have today as I'm recording this. And things will probably improve in the future, in which case perhaps we'll share that with everybody and we'll get everybody to the point where we're not having these problems. But this is a fairly common occurrence when using this on the Mac, and probably better that you learn to deal with it now than you learn to deal with it on your own at a later time. So that's it for now. We're going to see if we can quietly close this. Yeah, we quietly closed it. And I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.